Okay.
Bonjour. Hello. Bienvenue au concours de la baleine élégante. Welcome to Classy Whales Contest. Je suis à Saint-Denis, Nouvelles Baleines du Sud. I'm in Sydney, New South Wales. Can I please stop speaking French now? The theme of this contest is Build a REM. The premise is simple. We need to make a parody of Montreal's REM in our city. And fortunately, the Australian government has already done most of the work for me in the form of the Sydney Metro.
Everybody likes the Sydney Metro, right? Well, it actually has a lot of very similar elements to the Montreal REM.
So all I have to do is make it French.
Here's how the Sydney Metro looks as REM de Saint-Denis, Nouvelles Baleines du Sud.
Now, what is a REM, ladies, non-binaries and gentlemen? Well, it's got a few characteristics, such as it's the end of the world as we know it, and it doesn't go back to Rockville, and it's a automated metro in a city that already has decent rail service, and ticks all the boxes. And to be specifically a REM, not just a sparkling light metro, it needs some very specific features, such as it begins at Central Station, or in French, Gare Centrale. And so, we begin our journey at platforms 26, 27, but not those ones. Those ones are imposters. I'm talking about the real platforms 26, 27, which are the ghost platforms above the Eastern Suburbs Railway. And so, here is how REM de Saint-Denis goes through the CBD. Like so.
This stop is Gadigal.
Gadigal is the Aboriginal name of the traditional owners of this land, and it means grass tree. And in French, that will be translated as arbre à herbe, I think.
The ferries?
Now, the real metro goes underneath the harbour via Martin Place and Barangaroo. But to be a REM, it has to reuse a big bridge. And what better place than the Sydney Harbour Bridge? So therefore, to be converted into a REM, the metro needs to thread the needle under every single tunnel in downtown Sydney in order to reach Wynyard, which means winemaker, and is therefore vigneron. It would use the abandoned platforms 1 and 2, which were originally a tram terminus. Yes, a big combined road-rail bridge is very cool, which is why it's one of the features of the REM. In Montreal, it uses the Samuel de Champlain Bridge. And when it opened, all the buses that used to go across the river, those were all cut back to a forced transfer with the REM, which is actually where most of the A1 branch's ridership comes from. See all those buses? That bus lane was originally a tram track. The REM will convert it back into rail, and thus the buses will transfer to the REM. Yeah, see all those buses? There's a bus every few seconds over the harbour bridge. But of course, all the riders would be very upset, which I'm pretty sure they were in Montreal, so it's doing its job. Victoria Cross is a straightforward translation. Croix de Victoire.
Doors closing.
Crow's Nest is a fairly straightforward translation. Nid de Corbeau. Now, my main inspiration for this project was a English map of Montreal, and in this, the translation convention was any name that contained an English word was rendered back into French. So, Sherbrooke, expensive Rousseau. Now, Chatswood, chat is French for cat.
Chatsworth.
So, therefore, how would I translate Chatswood but Catsboy? Remember, one of the requirements for a REM is that it needs to reuse a railway tunnel. And that is what the Chatswood-Epping rail link is. North Ride.
Stop is North Ride.
Translated as the verb ride is Chevaucher du Nord. Now, Macquarie Park and Macquarie Uni are named for the colonial politician Lachlan Macquarie. He was very important to Australia's early history, which is why so many things are named Macquarie and so many people are named Lachlan. Now, I originally tried to translate Macquarie literally, but then I realized I should just localize it as the Quebec equivalent. So, Macquarie Park is Parc Jean Talon. Macquarie University is Université Jean Talon. Epping gives us our first fully pun-based name. It's very similar to the French word for pin.
Please stand clear.
Epping.
Doors closing.
Cherrybrook is Ruisseau de Cerise. Hopefully I'll get better at French by the time I'm done with this metro.
Are you learning French?
It's for a video.
Oh, for a video?
Yes. I'm trying to make a mashup of the Sydney Metro with the Montreal REM.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Castle Hill is Colline du Château. Hill's showground is Terrain d'Exposition des Collines. And Norwest is just a contraction of Northwest, resulting in Norwest. Bella Vista is Italian, and it means beautiful view. But I'm translating things from English to French. So how do I make Italian preserve its foreignness? And thus my decision is to render Italian in German. Schön Aussicht. So Kelly is nobody actually knows what Kelly means in its etymology.
This stop is Kellyville.
But ville is French for town. So therefore, Kellyville is Kelly Town. Rouse Hill, Colline de Rêve. Talawong means apple gum tree, Pommier gummier.
And with that, ladies non-binaries and gentlemen, I've completed the A1 branch. So now it's time to head back to Gare Centrale and show you the trunk line for the other three branches on the other side of the network.
Just like in Montreal, the stop on the trunk line on the other side of Gare Centrale is a major interchange station that serves a university. In Montreal, that's McGill, and in Sydney, that is Redfern, or in French, Fougère Rouge. The REM would go through the unused platforms in that giant hole. Right here on the other side of Redfern, there is a Japanese restaurant that I have been to with my family, and my parents thought it was good, so I'm bringing you here. Yes, I got the gyudon, because I haven't had gyudon in at least 6 months, I think.
That's so good.
Yeah. My, at Waterloo, I couldn't help but translate it with a pun, because Waterloo is water, like Sahara Desert or hill. One of the more unusual requirements of a REM is not just reusing a railway tunnel, but specifically reusing a railway tunnel that bankrupted the company who made it. The Montreal tunnel was bankrupted the Canadian Northern Railway, and meanwhile, Sydney has the airport line. It was built as a public-private partnership, but the private company that built it, they went kind of bankrupt within a year of opening. Now, the correct thing to do is just nationalize it, but sadly they had a 30-year contract. That means we got the airport station surcharge until 2030, at which point it will revert to government ownership. And if the government doesn't get rid of the airport station surcharge in 2030, there's going to be riots in the streets. This station is Green Square, in French, Carré Vert.
A REM network has 3 branches on the other side of the trunk line, and Green Square is where they diverge. Branch A4 reuses an old commuter rail line.
Sydenham. The name sure sounds a lot like Sydney, doesn't it? But although I translated Sydney as Saint-Denis, I decided to go for the other etymology that's been proposed for Sydenham, wide floodplain, resulting in vaste plaine inondable. Hello, dog of the bus. Hello. Marrickville has the French ville suffix and becomes Maurice Town. Dulwich Hill means Dill Meadow Hill and becomes Colleen de Prielaneth. Hurlstone Park is presumably a park where you hurl stones, and is thus Parc de Jet de Pierre. Canterbury breaks apart into two words, canter and bury, which mean petit galop et enterré. Campsie can only really be localized as Campsia. Belmore also breaks apart into two words. Can you guess what those words are? Beautiful plus. Beautiful plus. Lakemba breaks apart into Lake MBA, as in Master of Business Administration, and the result is the longest name on my map. Lac Maîtrise en Administration des Affaires. Wiley Park, if it's spelled like the adjective wily, becomes Parc Russie. It turns out the French word for punch is just punch. So punch bowl is just bowl a punch. Bankstown is the last station on the A4 branch, and it becomes Ville Bancaire, the banking city. And it is here we find another characteristic of the REM. When they turned an old commuter rail line into automated metro, it resulted in an awkward transfer to the remaining portion of the commuter rail line. That is the T6 Lidcombe-Bankstown line. And Royden Ing really hates how Birong and Yaguna do not have a one-seat ride to the city anymore. He always says, Broken Hill has more direct trains to the city than Yaguna and Birong, even though no one cares. And this is what they replaced it with. There's the train platforms with fare gates, and then you need to cross this to get into that. It doesn't seem very good in the rain.
Branch A2 runs in a deep bore to the airport.
The next station is Mascot, or Mascot. And now, here's a very funny Easter egg I can do. Canada has a Sydney airport, and people keep going to it when they try to go here. So, of course, I have to localize SYD, domestic, as YQY, domestique. And the last station is International, International. And that is the end of the A2 branch. But obviously, turning the airport line into the REM would make the entire T8 completely unusable. Please do not do this. Please, I'm begging you, please do not take away my express train from Green Square.
Branch A3 runs elevated to the far corner of the landmass.
Zetland is an old name for Shetland, and turns out it's said to mean catland, so Terre de Chat. Next stop on the REM is mine, UNSW, or Université Nouvelles Baleines du Sud. Kingsford is the King's Ford, Gué du Roi. Maroubra is an Aboriginal name, and it means something like path to the ceremonial ground. So I've shortened that to Chemin Cérémonial. Now, Malabar is a place in India. I'll ignore that, because Mal is also French for evil, resulting in the translation, Evil at the Bar. Little Bay, Petite Bay. And La Perouse is a place with a French name, which means the Perugia. Whatever that is. That is the end of branch A3. So, ladies non-binaries and gentlemen, what do you think of REM de Saint-Denis, Nouvelles Baleines du Sud? I'm pretty sure I've ticked all the boxes for what makes a REM and not just sparkling light metro. It's got Ulster Metropolis, check. It's got a branch to the one side of the city that gets to use a big road rail bridge and goes to suburbs, check. It's got a branch that reuses part of an old commuter rail line, resulting in better service, but an awkward transfer to the cut-off remaining portion of the commuter rail line. Check. It's got a branch that runs in a deep-bore tunnel to the airport. Check. It's got an elevated branch down to the far corner of the landmass. Check. It reuses a railway tunnel that bankrupted the company who made it. Check. It doesn't go back to Rockville. Check. And it's the end of the world as we know it? Check. 'Cause what have I done? I've taken the perfectly fine Sydney Metro and made it worse. And made it French. Which is even worse. Please do not build REM de Saint-Denis, Nouvelles Baleines du Sud. I think I'm probably the only creator in this contest whose city would be made worse by upgrading its system into the REM. Waste a whole bunch of money shuffling around the tunnels in the CBD just so that it gets to make the harbour bridge worse. Makes the entire T8 completely unusable. The closest thing to a winner here is Anzac Parade, which badly needs a metro, but not this one. Because it's so janky of how it hooks into Green Square. And finally, to top it all off, kneecapping capacity by running a tiny 4-car train instead of the 6-car train we have. I would like to make the following acknowledgements. Caleb and Josh for putting on this contest. My beloved girlfriend, Arica. C.A. Irish for making a list of station etymologies 100 years ago. Daniel Ryant Clark for making an English map of Montreal. The Gadigal and Bidjigal people of the Eora Nation. And thank you for watching. Fin.